Unbelievable 2 weeks, reaching your first Grand Slam final, playing this way in your first Grand Slam final is incredible.
Zverev became a Grand Slam champion, reached Wimbledon's final, and still found one question capable of making his confidence leave the room. Jannik, 9 wins running. Alexander, 4 old victories. The interviewer, offering museum exhibits as encouragement. That pause deserved more attention. Zverev was asked whether he can beat Sinner, and he paused when reminded that he had already done it 4 times. He laughed before explaining that those victories had not occurred during their latest 8 meetings. Nothing kills a motivational statistic faster than the person receiving it. Zverev has finally climbed beyond the label that followed him through 3 major final defeats. Yet he openly admits that Sinner gives him almost nothing. That is the real reason the question landed awkwardly. His old record described yesterday's opponent, while Sunday brings the upgraded version. The intrigue around what his team found out that night should not become fiction. Madrid supplied public evidence. Sinner conceded 3 games and made Alexander's familiar patterns look like instructions he had already read. Fans saw fear, coaches saw positioning, return pressure, and shrinking options. The irony is brutal. Zverev knows he can beat Sinner because history confirms it. History just refuses to explain how. Subscribe and give me your honest prediction. Now let us trace where Zverev's answers disappeared. The first answer disappeared at the Australian Open, although Zverev did not recognize the full scale of the problem immediately. He arrived in that 2025 final as the world number 2, carrying one of the most destructive serves in tennis and a winning record against Sinner. Those facts should have given him something solid. Instead, Sinner beat him in straight sets without allowing a breakpoint. That detail matters more than the trophy ceremony. Zverev did not merely lose 3 sets. He went through an entire major final without creating the moment that could have changed its emotional direction. Sinner controlled the contest so cleanly that Alexander's greatest weapon became a way of staying close rather than moving ahead. Afterward, Zverev stood beside the trophy and said he was not good enough. Sinner tried to comfort him, but sympathy from the man who had just dismantled his challenge carried its own uncomfortable message. Alexander had reached another defining match and found that effort, ranking, and ambition could not force an opening. His core instinct has always been control. The huge first serve establishes the point. His backhand protects the middle of the court. His height closes angles that appear available against other players. When those elements cooperate, opponents spend entire service games negotiating with a locked door. Sinner does not negotiate for long. He takes the return early enough to shorten Zverev's recovery time. The ball comes back before Alexander can move comfortably into the next position. A serve that usually creates an attacking forehand can suddenly produce a neutral exchange. Sometimes the return lands deep enough to make the server defend immediately. That changes Zverev as a person on the court. His authority normally begins before contact because opponents know what the serve can do. Against Sinner, the psychological reward disappears when strong deliveries keep returning near the baseline. Alexander then starts looking for extra speed, narrower targets, or a quicker ending. The search for more can disturb the patterns that made him dangerous in the first place. The irony began at the 2023 US Open, the last time he defeated Sinner. That match lasted almost 5 hours in brutal conditions. Sinner struggled physically, while Zverev survived a contest that demanded patience and nerve. The victory gave Alexander a 4-1 lead in their rivalry and appeared to confirm that his size, serve, and backhand created a naturally difficult matchup for Jannik. The conclusion was reasonable then. It became dangerous when treated as permanent. Sinner improved his serve, strengthened his movement, and became more comfortable taking control from neutral positions. His baseline game had always carried speed, but the later version gave opponents fewer soft stretches. Zverev eventually described that quality himself. Jannik did not have the dips that offered recovery time. The challenger had become the established king before the old king of their private rivalry accepted the transfer. Their following meetings slowly removed the comforting parts of Zverev's record. Sinner won indoors. He beat him in major competition. He handled the matchup on hard courts, then carried the same authority onto clay. Each result took away another convenient explanation. A defeat on one surface can be blamed on movement. Another can be linked to fatigue, form, or scheduling. A sequence across different conditions begins to resemble ownership. By 2026, Zverev was meeting Sinner so often that his consistency became part of the punishment. Alexander accurately noted that he lost to Jannik more frequently because he kept advancing far enough to face him. It was a fair defense, delivered with perfect accidental irony. His reward for being better than almost everyone else was another appointment with the one player making him look ordinary. Indian Wells added another defeat. Miami offered Zverev more opportunities, especially in the second set, but Sinner still closed the match. Alexander could tell himself that the contest had been competitive. The scoreboard allowed room for optimism, even if the result repeated the same message. Monte Carlo was less polite. While trailing in the opening set, Zverev looked toward his father and said that he did not know how to play Sinner. It was not a prepared answer given under studio lights. It came from inside the match when players usually expose the problem before media training arrives to clean the language. That sentence became more important than any tactical chart. An elite player can know which shot is hurting him. He can recognize that his court position is poor or that his first serve percentage has fallen. Saying he does not know how to play someone describes a breakdown in the relationship between information and action. Alexander knew Sinner returned early. He knew Jannik redirected pace. His team could provide patterns, locations, and preferred combinations. None of that guaranteed he could execute a solution, while the ball arrived faster than the plan expected. Sinner won 6-1, 6-4. Zverev later compared the experience to playing against a wall. The comparison was slightly unfair to walls, which generally do not redirect a forehand onto the opposite sideline. Humor made the comment shareable, but frustration gave it weight. A wall does not become nervous, donate errors, or care that the opponent has finally produced a brilliant point. It sends the challenge back. Sinner's identity in this rivalry had become exactly that: controlled repetition with enough aggression to prevent Zverev from settling. Then Madrid provided the viral moment around which everything turned. Zverev reached the final and spoke about facing the best player in the world. He said tennis appeared easy for Sinner and hoped he could make it more difficult. The interviewer reminded him that he had beaten Jannik 4 times. There was the pause. Alexander laughed and separated those 4 victories from the latest 8 meetings. Social media did what it always does with a fraction of hesitation. It produced a complete psychological diagnosis before the interview had ended. Some fans heard surrender. Others praised Zverev for refusing to perform fake confidence. The clip traveled because both readings were available. His expression supplied the comedy, while the losing streak supplied the cruelty. The next match removed most of the room for interpretation. Sinner won the Madrid final 6-1, 6-2. Zverev had entered with the serve of a champion and the historical evidence of 4 victories. He left with 3 games and a new public admission that a sizable gap existed between Jannik and everybody else. That night did not reveal a secret weakness in Sinner. It revealed how little value the old information retained. The team could examine the serve locations and notice that Jannik was not merely blocking returns into play. He was controlling depth early enough to prevent Alexander from occupying the baseline on his terms. They could study Zverev's first movement after serving and see how often he lacked time to establish an attacking position. They could also examine the forehand exchanges. Zverev's backhand remains one of the strongest on tour, particularly when he can strike through the court without being dragged too far outside his base. Sinner does not need to challenge that wing blindly. He can pressure the forehand, change direction when the opening appears, and force Alexander to hit while moving. Once Zverev retreats, his height becomes more complicated. Long reach helps him defend balls that escape other players, but recovering from deep positions requires additional movement. Sinner steps forward and steals time while Alexander searches for enough space to use his full swing. That difference is measured in fractions of a second. Emotionally, it can feel enormous. The team's most disturbing discovery may have concerned expectation. Zverev had begun describing the matchup as one in which anything below his highest level would lead to a quick defeat. That statement respected Sinner's quality, but it also placed Alexander inside a terrible mental contract. Perfection is not a workable match plan. A player who believes ordinary errors are unaffordable can become cautious at the wrong time. He may force an attacking shot because a neutral exchange feels unsafe. Either reaction gives the opponent control. Sinner's stable temperament makes that pressure worse because his face offers little evidence that the match is changing. This is where the human story moves beyond forehands and returns. Zverev spent years chasing the major title that would prove he belonged among the leading champions of his era. Losing the 2020 US Open final after leading Dominic Thiem by 2 sets left a scar. The Australian Open defeat against Sinner added another example of arriving at the door without passing through it. Winning Roland Garros changed that identity. Alexander no longer reaches Wimbledon carrying the insult of being called the best player without a major. He has crossed the line that once appeared to move whenever he approached it. That should make him freer. It also makes the Sinner problem harder to dismiss. Before becoming a major champion, Alexander could connect his uncertainty to the broader burden surrounding his career. Now he has proof that he can finish the biggest job. If the same doubt appears against Jannik, it belongs specifically to this matchup. Wimbledon provides conditions that could alter the argument. Zverev's serve gains additional value on grass, particularly when he lands the first ball and keeps points short. His improved willingness to move forward can prevent Sinner from settling into repeated baseline exchanges. The lower bounce may reward a decisive first strike before Jannik establishes rhythm. Alexander's run to the final supports that possibility. He handled Taylor Fritz with commanding serving and removed Arthur Ferry in straight sets. The first set tiebreak against Ferry showed the advantage of his delivery when pressure rises. Once he took control, the match moved quickly. Sinner arrived through a different demonstration of power. He defeated Djokovic in straight sets, struck 16 aces, and did not surrender his serve. Novak described Jannik as operating at cruising speed while admitting he could not keep pace. That result placed another layer of irony over Zverev's task. Djokovic had already shown at the Australian Open that Sinner could be beaten in a major semi-final. At Wimbledon, Jannik answered by making one of the greatest grass court players look unable to reach the necessary speed. Zverev now enters as the challenger despite being the newest Roland Garros champion. Sinner remains the established king because this particular kingdom is built from their last 9 meetings. The social media conversation will turn every early point into evidence. If Zverev misses a forehand, viewers will call it fear. If Sinner returns a 135-mile-per-hour serve near the baseline, the old wall comparison will return before the rally ends. Should Alexander begin strongly, the same accounts will announce that his team found the secret. Tennis rarely supplies secrets that conveniently. The practical answer is likely less glamorous. Zverev needs a high first serve percentage without chasing reckless speed. He must accept that some excellent serves will return and prepare for the following ball instead of treating the return as an insult. His forehand needs depth more than spectacle. Moving forward must be a chosen pattern rather than an emergency escape. He also needs to tolerate stretches where Sinner appears untouchable. Jannik's level can make 2 lost points feel like a tactical emergency. Changing a sensible plan after one brilliant return would allow Sinner's reputation to coach Alexander from the opposite baseline. That is the real battle hidden beneath the final. Zverev is not searching only for a way through Sinner's game. He is trying to stop previous defeats from entering the court before him. His pause in Madrid came because the interviewer offered 4 victories as evidence, while Alexander's mind immediately supplied the 8 defeats that followed. The silence sat between 2 versions of the rivalry. One belonged to a time when Zverev could trust familiar patterns. The other belonged to a player who had learned how to remove them. What his team found that night was visible in Sinner's return depth, court position, and refusal to provide cheap relief. They learned that their historical advantage had expired. More importantly, they learned that telling Alexander to reproduce his old victories would solve nothing because Jannik was no longer offering the same match. Sunday therefore asks a cleaner question than the interviewer did. Zverev does not need to prove that he can beat Sinner. 4 completed matches already prove it. He needs to demonstrate that he can defeat the current version without becoming trapped by the memory of the previous 9. If he serves with authority, protects his court position, and accepts the difficult moments without abandoning the plan, the pause may eventually look like honest recognition before a breakthrough. If Sinner controls the return and pushes him backward again, that unfinished answer will appear prophetic. The cruel part is that Zverev already understands both possibilities. He knows history supports him, but recent evidence belongs entirely to Sinner. He knows his new status should create belief, but status cannot return serve. He knows his team can identify patterns, but the player must still execute them while the world number 1 removes time from every decision. That is why his laugh mattered. It was not a confession of certain defeat. It was the response of someone who understood that the comforting answer was technically true and competitively useless. Zverev has finally escaped one label. Wimbledon gives him the chance to escape another. Beating Sinner would not merely end a 9-match sequence. It would prove that Alexander can update his own game as quickly as Jannik updated the rivalry. Sinner will remain loyal to the instinct that created his advantage. He will take time away, protect the baseline, and make emotional noise seem unnecessary. Zverev must follow his own instinct without allowing it to harden into panic. His serve should create the opening, but his decisions after it will determine whether the opening survives. The team did not uncover a hidden door in Madrid. They discovered that the old entrance had been sealed. Now Zverev must build another one on center court. Subscribe and tell me whether Alexander finally finds the solution, or whether Sinner turns another hopeful statistic into a museum exhibit.